morning. Welcome to Viking Preparedness. I'm Pastor Joe Fox. This is going to be part one of a two-part series on the wealthy and the poor preparing for Teowaki, preparing for the end times. Now I realize that wealthy and poor are relative terms, right? Probably relative to where I'm standing, since I'm the one talking about it. But for the purposes of this discussion, wealthy will be those of you who have tens of thousands of dollars to millions of dollars of, if not disposable, definitely liquid money, right? That you can use to get ready for what you see coming down the pike. And again, for the purposes of this series, the poor will be those who basically have no disposable income, right? And so we're going to talk about the rich first. If you're reading like I'm reading, many wealthy people are starting to wake up and see the need to prepare for what they see as coming down the pike, right? There, is that better lighting? A little bit. Now, they are buying land in South Island of New Zealand. Why? Because probably not a whole lot of nuclear fallout gonna hit there, right? They are building structures all over this country, big ones with, nice houses with all the mod cons because, hey, we're gonna spend our vacation there now. Sitting on top of bunkers, right? As good as they can afford to buy. With, solar power and water and all the food storage and, alarms and security systems and things like that. But there are some things I think that these wealthy preppers are not considering, and so hence this video. Free advice from Pastor Joe. One thing you have to understand about wealthy people, and they understand it about themselves, is that most of them earned their money. I know there's a bunch of people out there that are screaming now about the one percenters, but most of them earned their money. Some of them made it the old-fashioned way, they inherited it, but they've all hung on to it. They earn it, they hang on to it, and what does that show? Intelligence. They understand how to deal with things. And for the really wealthy people, they have learned how to take their money and invest it in different things and get good returns by paying attention to details. In many cases, they've invented things or they've managed companies and, they have done that well. And there's their weakness. If I could play it, in the background without getting kicked off by YouTube, I'd play Frank Sinatra singing My Way. I did it my way, because that's what they think, and to a large degree they did. There's a reason I don't have millions and millions of dollars and some other people do. When they start thinking I did it my way, that can lead to overinflated ego or unrealistic expectations that since they handled this aspect of life under these conditions and did really well, they can handle this aspect of life and continue to do really well. And it's not necessarily so. When the balloon goes up, when the hammer drops, when chaos reigns, many of these people who have prepared these retreats plan on going in, buttoning up, and having everything taken care of for years, and then popping their head up and having a look around and, coming out to rule the new whatever's left, right? I'm being a little facetious, but you know what I mean. What they don't think, what they don't plan on is people. You're gonna need people. I know you made all your money on your own and you made these wise investments and things, but you are going to need people at your survival retreat. Today, I'm coming back to that. Today, ranchers, I met some ranchers in Texas. I remember I told a guy one time, he goes, well, how much property you got? I said, I have a pretty good chunk. It's less than 200 acres. He laughed, right? 10,000 acres. and that was his one ranch. And then he had another ranch, dun, 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 dun. These guys have money and land, but ranching today is not like ranching 100 years ago. It doesn't take many people to run a ranch. Around here, small holdings, maybe a couple hundred acres of pasture, one guy handles most of it. And then when it's time to, give vaccines or that kind of thing, he'll get a couple buddies, rancher buddies, to come help him, and they'll spend an afternoon or a day putting them in chutes, and they go off and then they share labor. But day to day, one guy. On the big ranches, they have an airplane or a helicopter. They all have pickup trucks and those cool little four-wheel drive dune buggies that they drive around and check the herd on. But they don't need a whole lot of people to do that. In the olden days, you had the rancher, and he lived in the ranch house, the big house, with his family. But then they had ranch hands, right, that lived in barracks type situation, right? And those guys would go out and run the fence and chase the errant cattle and, pull the calf out of the creek, all those different things that they would do, all that work. And for that, they got room and board and a little bit of money so that they could go to town every now and then and do whatever. And their room and board had to be good enough that they were willing to stay there. The cool thing about having ranch hands in the old days is when somebody else is trying to encroach on the rancher's territory or bad times come, he has a private little army of guys, right? He didn't keep them around like Blackwater, just sitting around twiddling their thumbs doing nothing against the day when it's time to fight. But these guys were good at what they did, and so they're being used, they're being utilized during the day. They are earning their keep, keeping the ranch running. And then if bad guys come, they can form a little posse or, squad or something and help repel boarders. I think the rich people today aren't really considering that. I know cattle ranchers today don't think about that, because when end times come, it takes one guy with a deer rifle and a chainsaw to shoot a cow, run across the fence, maybe cut the fence with bolt cutters, hacksaw off, chainsaw off the back leg and run away, and you're gone, and you just got a whole bunch of steak or whatever. They don't have people, and they don't think about security in that way anymore when people get desperate. And so for those of you who are wealthy and preparing, I want you to please start considering how you are going to integrate people, because you're going to have to. And I would suggest that you consider things like housing, feeding, watering, medical care, taking care of your crew. You're going to have to do that to keep them around. And you want to keep them happy enough that these peasants don't grab their pitchforks and come, charge the castle, which is where you live, right? So start planning at your retreat how you're going to bring in other people. You're also going to have to plan how to bring them in. You're going to have to spot people. You're going to have to assess them. Then you're going to have to recruit the good ones and train them and keep them occupied. There's a lot going on there. Now, some people, like the ranchers I've been talking about, they can talk at the high level, with their financial advisors, and they can talk at the dare I say, lower level with the ranch hands or the guy that's doing things, his mechanic. Those guys usually transfer back and forth pretty well in abilities to communicate. But a lot of times I've also met people who were high up in industry and finance, and they weren't real good, even in the oil fields sometimes. They weren't real good talking to the guy who gets his hands dirty, right? And so you have to do, if you're one of these wealthy people that's starting to think about this, you have to do a real self-assessment. I know you're good at making your money. I know you're good at, getting things done under conditions as they exist today. But if you're not good with people, if you're not good with blue-collar workers, ranch hands, the guy who's putting up your fence, all those kinds of things, you might want to think about recruiting, hiring somebody who is. Can you inspire confidence in the men? Can you make them want to follow you? Do you have leadership? There's a difference between leadership and management. And if you don't have the ability to lead men, real men, then you're going to have to hire somebody who can. Think, retired sergeant major, right? They know how to lead men. And so start considering those things. I know I did a video recently about a package I got from campingsurvival.com, and it was a radio setup where I could set up a relay and relay radio messages back and forth over about 50 miles. And I know a lot of people who are thinking, oh, it's just going to be me and mine. I even got some comments like that. We're just going to go hole up in our bunker, or it's just going to be my family. I don't have anybody to talk to. I think some of the wealthy people could be thinking that way too. And, it's like, it's just me and my wife and my 2 teenagers. Yeah, well, when you hire these ranch hands and you send them down the road to see what's going on at the intersection, or you hire your security party or your work party or whatever, you're going to need to be able to communicate. And they're probably not bringing communications gear with them, right? So start thinking about that. Start thinking about how you're going to recruit people, how you're going to house people, how you're going to take care of people, how you're going to lead people. Because again, you don't want these people that you bring into whatever perimeter level you want to bring them into to go against the castle. What you want them to do is stand on that perimeter and repel boarders when the time comes. But you don't want to go hire, 15 Blackwater guys that all they're going to do is sit around until bad guys come. Bad guys may never come. And then you got guys who, they're good with guns, but what else are they going to do for you? Start thinking about that stuff. It's not just you. You can't make it all on your own. You're going to need people. And when you get those people, you got to take care of them. All right, part 2 will be on the poor folk. What are y'all supposed to be thinking about and doing against the day when chaos reigns? All right, I'll see y'all out there.